Hi everyone. Today I'm going to talk about some movies that I've seen in the movie theater. Now I went back to the movie theaters last, I think it was November, with an AMC A-list subscription. I took it off pause. I had been an A-list subscriber pretty much since it began. One of the greatest deals in the history of movie going. Well, I was wondering whether it's going to be worth it. I had since, during the pandemic, I bought a 65-inch TV. I started buying Blu-rays again, and now 4K UHDs. But I always love watching movies in a movie theater. There's just something about it, going back to childhood. So I'm going to talk about 6 movies. 2 of them are before I got I got a really bad virus in January, and really set me back for a few weeks. And even when the symptoms went away, I had a lingering cough, and I didn't want to sit in the movie theater and then get a coughing jag. Even though most of the movies I go to, there's hardly anybody there besides me. And then when I'm done with that, I'm going to talk about the movie-going experience, which I find fascinating. And I've talked about it in a couple previous videos. And when I first went back, I was making movie videos on each individual movie, but that's kind of ambitious, seeing as all these videos I put out 3 a week. I know that my supply of videos to YouTube probably far exceeds the demand, but I love talking about movies. So if anybody's interested, let's get started. So in the end of December, I saw Empire of Light. This was a Sam Mendes movie starring Olivia Colman. And it's set in around 1980, and in a movie palace. So I was hooked by the movie palace, to be sure. In fact, the movie palace is kind of the most interesting thing in the movie for me. Olivia Colman gives a terrific performance. She is working there as sort of the manager. Colin Firth is playing the proprietor of this. This is kind of like an old style movie palace. But it's in decay. There was a ballroom above the movie palace that's all closed down, and but they're getting ready for the UK premiere of Chariots of Fire, which is going to be a big deal. Lots of big celebrities coming, including Paul McCartney. But the movie gets kind of saddled with 2 plots. One is Olivia Colman falling for a new young black man who is working sort of as an usher. She's showing him the way. They begin a relationship that's inappropriate, perhaps as far as age and as far as the community at large. Interracial romance out in the open is certainly going to be subject to some community violence by some people, and then also Olivia Colman, we learn, is also saddled with mental illness, and that's a lot for this movie, I think, to endure in order to be successful. But Toby Jones plays the projectionist. I love the scenes where he explains to this young new employee the mechanics of projection. That part of it I really like. Then also back in the end of December, I watched Babylon. All 3 hours and 20 minutes. I made it through it. Somehow I made it through Babylon. There was only one other person in the audience with me, and she left with about half hour to go. And that last half hour is probably the weakest part of the film. The movie goes everywhere, and the first 40, I think it's 40 minutes before the credits, and we get a party scene, a Hollywood-type party scene in the 1920s. We're in silent film days as we're approaching the sound era. Of debauchery, and I mean, this is debauchery with a capital D. I mean, you can't believe it. That first 40 minutes is just, it's incredible, and it's disgusting. And I was particularly annoyed by its very brief depiction of Fatty Arbuckle and his rape, the rape allegations against Fatty Arbuckle in real life. But there's some great scenes of how they film silent films. It's really, that's by far, I think, the best the aspect section of the film. And I also enjoyed Margot Robbie and Brad Pitt. I thought they were very entertaining. And Damien Chazelle, the director, writer, director, how he convinced Paramount to finance this movie, and how Paramount felt that they should release a 3-hour, 20-minute movie. I mean, Damien Chazelle really lucked out. Well, maybe not, because I think a lot of this film, this running time of this film it's way too long, especially the ending. But you know what? I sat there for 3 hours and 20 minutes. I didn't once want to get up to go to the bathroom. It's like nothing else you're going to see in recent years. And because it was so reviled by the critics and nobody went to see it, when I saw it, one person with me, right across the hallway was Avatar was playing with packed in the Dolby and IMAX theaters that were right across the hall. They were packed, and 2 people watching Damien Chazelle's very expensive movie, Babylon. And then after the break, the first movie I saw after the break was Marlo, Neil Jordan's version of Philip Marlowe, based on a novel by John Banville. I don't know if he wrote these Marlowe novels under his assumed name, Benjamin Black. So it stars Liam Neeson, who is almost my age. I think he's 70 years old, and I guess he's probably playing 50. But you can't hide a 70-year-old walk. I walked way better when I was 50 than I was 70. So he's way too old for the part. So you have to get past that miscasting. I'm assuming that Marlo would not have been made without Liam Neeson, because in his 60s he became a bankable movie star. Every year in January or February we get another Liam Neeson film. But there's some excellent recreation, historical recreation. We get dueling femme fatales with Diane Kruger, Jessica Lange, and some deliciously evil villains in Danny Houston and Alan Cumming. Then I saw Emily, and Emily is Emily Bronte. And I have read all the Bronte books, but Emily Bronte only wrote one book, Wuthering Heights. And one of the great mysteries in literary history is, how could Emily Bronte have ever written such a feverishly dark novel like Wuthering Heights and create such a character as Heathcliff? She, by all accounts, Emily Bronte never even left the house. So this is written and directed by Frances O'Connor, who played Fanny Price in Mansfield Park around 1900 or around 2000, which was a Jane Austen adaptation, and she sort of tries to explain how Emily Bronte could have written such a novel, because she gives her a bodice-ripping, sexually romantic encounter with the assistant curate. Emily, the Bronte's father, was the curate of the village that they lived in, and this is, I think Anne Bronte is the sister, I think, that actually had sort of a platonic relationship with him. So I think O'Connor really gets imaginative in this section. But the performance by Emmy McKay is really good. I mean, she's dark. Look, she has that kind of dark presence, and dark hair, dark eyebrows. There's great shots on the moors, and overall, I enjoyed this film. It's nothing great, but if you have a chance to see it on streaming and you're interested in the Brontes, for sure you should see Emily. And the fifth movie is AntMan and the Wasp, and the Continuum. I can't even remember the name, and it was in a Dolby theater. And so far in my Dolby and IMAX movie-going experience, I've always enjoyed all the movies I've seen, and at some level or other, because it's just fantastic projection, and I really appreciate the sound, and the picture quality is so great. But I don't know, AntMan, I saw the original AntMan. I thought that was a lot of fun, but I made it through an hour and I walked out. And I can't remember the last time I walked out of a movie. And I wasn't an A-list subscriber, so it didn't matter one way or the other. as far as the financial end of it went. I probably would have stayed. But it was 20 minutes of trailers preceding the movie, which was sort of nonstop explosions, car crashes. My head was spinning. And then the AntMan starts and there's hardly any preparation, and we're in the continuum or whatever it is. And I couldn't make heads or tails what was going on, but the explosions everywhere, superpowers coming out of nowhere. I always had trouble with some of these characters. They have superpowers until it seems like they don't have superpowers. And who has the super of the superpowers? I didn't care. It was AntMan became, at least in the first hour, was just a minor character. It's all Michelle Pfeiffer, and mostly, and I had no problem with that. But the dialogue was so silly, and these one-line, pithy, make my day kind of dialogue. After an hour, I skedaddled. So lastly, a few days ago, I saw Triangle of Sadness, Ruben Östlund's film in English. Woody Harrelson has a part in the film. He's not prominently displayed in the credits, and he does not have a really big part, but he's good in the part he's got. And Harris Dickinson and Charlie Dean are the two stars, very attractive. The Triangle of Sadness is about Harris Dickinson is playing a male model, and when he's going for an audition, they describe you've got to work on getting rid of the lines in your triangle of sadness, which is up here. But there is sadness in this. When I got back home, I looked up, as I do, did I ever see these performers again or previously? And I learned when I clicked on Charlie Dean, it said was an actress, and she passed away last August from some sort of rare infection. And I was snookered. I was, for an hour, it took me an hour to, absorb the news because she was so attractive and a very good actress. It's a skewering of the wealthy classes, so much the same as the menu, especially when we get on the yacht. There's projectile vomiting, there's all kinds of, during a storm, and everybody gets seasick. And normally I don't like this stuff, but this is a black comedy. This is, you never know what's going to happen next. But I think as far as Östlund goes, skewering the rich is easy to do, the onion and the glass onion and the menu, and why we allow these people to get super, super, super rich is beyond me. We're living in democracies, but somehow the average people are just fine with the rich having billions and billions and billions of dollars. So, and Östlund sort of confronts that, but where he's really interesting is in the power dynamics, I think, of class and of individuals, of the relationship between Harrison Dickinson and Charlie Dean's character. And especially when the movie goes Admiral Crichton. If you know Admiral Crichton, you know what I'm talking about, where all the relationships get upended and in a really delightful and ultimately scary way. So Triangle of Sadness is one of these movies. Triangle of Sadness, I think, is the one that I would recommend the highest. Now, as far as the movie-going experience, I'm still on the fence. I've renewed. I've allowed my A-list to renew. I had to have it for 3 months, and because I still haven't made up my mind. Now, in talking about movie-going experience, when you go online in the forums and everybody complains about how high the cost is, and so I looked up 50 years ago, because I'm doing a series in 1973, and I looked up the average ticket price, which I think was $1.75, something like that. And adjusting for inflation, for 2023, 50 years later, the average price would be about $13.38, I think it was. So you can go to the movies for $5, if you can go to early shows like I'm able to do. Of course, I have the A-list, doesn't matter. But and then I think $11 is the weekday price for the evening, and maybe it's $13 on the weekend. Of course, we have IMAX and Dolby, which have higher prices. We didn't have that, 50 years ago. But we did have Cinerama. I went to several Cinerama roadshow presentations, and I think the last one was Ice Station Zebra around 1970 that I saw in Cinerama. And you paid a lot more for that, comparable to what you would pay to go to an IMAX today. And the $1.75 back 50 years ago, I don't remember. That sounds like I've always lived in a densely populated area, but that sounds like a second tier theater. After it played its first run, it would go to second runs. That $1.50, $1.75. It seemed to me I was paying $2.50, $3 to go to the movies 50 years ago. And then people complain about the concessions. Well, 50 years ago, concessions were beyond the scope. Since I was going to the movies 2-3 times a week 50 years ago, I couldn't afford to buy the popcorn and the candy. It was so overpriced. And the people complain about talking, that other people in the audience talk. Well, they talked 50 years ago as well, believe me. Now we do have the added cell phone presence in movie theaters today. But I think I've seen about 15 films since I went back. Only once was I bothered by it. It was a very easy move. I just moved in front of him, so I wasn't able, I wasn't bothered anymore. And certainly he didn't have that, 50 years ago. And when I first started going to movies, they allowed smoking in the movie theater. When I was a kid, I couldn't believe you walked into the movie and you had a whole bunch of smoke in the movie theater. But to me, what is the real negative of going to the movies today, outside of the fact they don't really make very good movies? I don't know. I'm an old timer. I hate to always say, oh, everything was better in the past. But the projection is really subpar, especially after you go to see a movie in Dolby or IMAX and then you go back to the regular digital theater. It's like, what happened? The movie theaters aren't dark enough. I don't think they changed the projection, the light bulbs. The movies are too dim. They don't have the picture quality. And because today, I have a 65-inch television over there, and people have even larger, and screens, and when you get a Blu-ray, and especially a 4K UHD, and you see it, and you see how bright and how crystal clear the image is, and you go to a regular projection, and digital theater, and it's nothing like it. I still like seeing movies on the big screen, don't get me wrong, but they got to do something about that. And there is something called laser at AMC, and I was reading about it a couple weeks ago. I haven't asked the guy who is in charge of the presentation at the AMC, who's a really nice guy. And whenever I've had complaints, that I know he can resolve, he's quick to change, make the corrections. But evidently, this is going to give us much more of a brighter, crisper image, and also audio. The audio presentation in these digital theaters, and I've gone to various AMC, and this is all AMC, and it's just astonishing to me how you get a crackly speaker over here. I went to see a film called Armageddon Time, and there was music with the credits, I believe, and then there was no music. I could hear a little bit of music over in the speakers to the left, and I thought, boy, that's a brave choice to make a whole movie without a movie score. When I got home, I learned that not only was there a movie score, there was all kinds of songs from the era in which it was set, and they had a whole playlist. I didn't hear any of that. That's extreme, and I was just absolutely dumbfounded by that. And that, I guess, the theaters can upgrade, and this lasered AMC is going to be a very, very long process, but I've heard really positive, reviews of how good the projection is in the theaters, from this standpoint of comparing what it looks like projected in audio in a movie theater versus what you can have on your television at home. They've got to do something to convince people it's gonna look good. Even in the movie theater, it's gonna look good. So I'm about to head out to see Living with Bill Nighy, which is a remake of Akira Kurosawa's Ikiru screenplay by Kazuo Ishiguro, a Nobel Prize-winning author who wrote the screenplay. So I'm dubious of why remake such a great movie like Akira, but you know, Bill Nye is good, and I'm actually looking forward to it. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.